Hi everybody, today's special guest is Habiba Ali. Habiba, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Hi, thank you.
Good, and you guys are down in Birmingham, aren't you?
Yeah, I am now. I'm not originally from Birmingham. I'm from up north as well. But I moved here about 2.5 years ago.
Do you want to tell everybody what you do?
So I'm a senior pediatric trainee. So I've got 1 year left before I'm a consultant, hopefully. And currently I'm working in Birmingham Heartlands Hospital here in the West Midlands.
Fab, and thank you very much for the job that you do, by the way, especially at moments like this over the last couple of months where we've been in COVID-19 and all the pressures that comes with that too.
So I started work. I've just been on maternity leave, and I just restarted when COVID had kind of kicked in. So my work is very different to how I left it before going on mat leave.
Good, and make sure you guys stay safe as well. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about particularly was I've been doing 30 days of free education, free training, and I guess an opportunity for me just to talk to people, which is great, seeing that you're stuck in shielding, or should I say safe in shielding. It depends on how important terminology is to you. But we go back 6 years now at the RVI, and for people out there is that we know Habiba because Jessica was born with a congenital diaphragmatic genesis, and Habiba helped look after her a little bit.
Yeah, so I met both of you and Jessica when she was first born, within the first couple of days, and she was extremely sick. She was on a ventilator, and we were kind of riding a very fine line between keeping her breathing, keeping her stable, thinking about when she can have her operation, making her grow through all of this as well. And I think it was quite a stressful time for everyone that was involved, really, with Jess.
Yeah, that's a good word to use there, stress. Because there is a lot of stress in an environment like that, and we certainly are in a stressful environment now, but it might be a slightly different type of stress, and I certainly believe there's different types of stress based on different environments. And you've got two parents. Well, actually, on that ward you had 6 parents who literally were going probably through hell, weren't they?
Yeah. The neonatal unit at the RVI looks after. It's a tertiary unit, which means that it has the sickest of the babies, probably from all over the northeast, and for very different reasons. So extremely premature, surgical complications that Jessica had, complications that they develop throughout their neonatal period, so when they're first born to about a month old. Also babies that are born when they would have been due, but because of kind of complications with the birth and things around there. And as neonatal doctors and pediatricians working in neonatal units, having to look after sick babies, yes, but also making sure that we're looking after the needs and the stresses of parents. It's an intensive care unit, and the way I always phrase it is that it's intensive in other ways as well. So in terms of stress and mental health, both for families, to be honest, the staff too, it can be intense.
Yeah, how do you deal with that? Because looking back now, and I've always been a relatively positive person. I always kind of look in terms of things, how well they can go, and be a little bit more optimistic with my own mindset. I've always been like that, but I certainly look back now and there's moments I can't even remember it was that dark and that bad of a place. How do you guys work with parents who are in that state of ridiculous stress that they can't actually see anything?
I think it's really important I think each doctor deals with patients and families differently. But we're all taught throughout medical school and throughout our career good communication techniques and how to try and kind of comfort parents and families and try and get through their stresses. For me personally, I think there's a lot to try and figure out where the stress is coming from. I could sit there and make an assumption that the reason the parent is stressed is because of, well, it's obvious their daughter's unwell, but actually there may be something else that's going on deeper, and you sometimes have to explore that a little bit. Being kind goes so far, and being there and present in the moment too, and actually listening. I think sometimes it's quite difficult for doctors in particular, is because we, especially intensive care units, actually, as a doctor, I can often swan in and out and not even develop a rapport or feel, maybe potentially come across as not listening to a parent or not being able to give them the time. Whereas nursing staff are amazing at that. They're there by the bedside. They really do develop a bond with the baby as well as the parents. So I think for me, it's important to listen to nursing staff when they're telling me that the parent needs you, that they want to talk, that they want to listen. And actually, if I can give as much time as possible to a family, then that's all I want to do. Because in that moment, they don't want to hear about the science. You don't want to hear about, oh, I think this percent is going to survive, or this percent is going to need surgery. What you want to hear is, I'm here, let's talk through things. I'll come back when you can, think about things with a fresh mind. Communication makes up so much of what I believe I can do as a good doctor anyway.
Yeah, and that certainly helped us a lot, and is continuing to help us. And we're very different, and how I see things is certainly different to how the wife sees things. So that first week and a half, I thought we were in an individual room. I can't remember seeing anybody, and it was the couple who were behind us who had twins. It was about a week and a half later, and they knew my wife, and they were talking to her, and I was just like, there's somebody else in this room. And
you're in your
own.
Yeah, because you're going through the worst time of your life. The most stressful thing that could be happening is happening. It's like a sledgehammer to every aspect. And in that moment, it's selfish is the wrong word to use, but it's okay to be selfish. It's okay to only think about yourself. You don't need to think about anyone else in that moment, because at that moment, your child is sick and you need to be there and present for them. You guys were in a bay with 3 other babies.
Yeah.
There was one slot that kept swapping, and then the twins were in there too. I do, even 6 years ago, I can vividly remember even Jessica's setup, because you personalized it. Actually, it was amazing what you did with her corner, in terms of making it feel like it was a part of you was with her all the time. So even when you weren't there, she had comfort teddies and things in with her. You had a big offensive football side up on the wall, the wrong team.
Yeah, let's not talk about football when we're having this emotional conversation right here.
Lucky Charms, like I remember very vividly, and I think it's important when you know you're going to be there a while, but even if you're not, there's a lot to be said that to create an atmosphere that makes you feel calmer, and it should be allowed, and it is allowed normally. COVID does change things a little bit, so I imagine. But there's no reason why it shouldn't be encouraged to have pieces of you close to your baby. And we encourage it in terms of bonding as well. It's very difficult to bond with your baby when you sometimes can't even physically touch them.
Yeah.
I love the apparatuses that's on them, because of the level of care they're getting. If we're helping to breathe for them with a ventilator. But we promote skin to skin in lots of different ways. So we give parents these little kind of towels and towelettes with like teddy bears on, so they can carry them on their chest, and you can sock around the baby so the baby can pick up on smells. It helps bond with the baby. It helps mum produce breast milk if they want to feed the children. And the more research and evidence that we do in those sorts of things, it's incredible how beneficial these things can be, both for the baby but the parents too. It gives you a sense of being able to do something for your child.
It's an interesting journey in terms of understanding how resilient people can be. And I don't know whether you can actually teach resilience for a moment like that. You either have to already have something that you can get through it, you can process some strategies and some habits to get through it, or you can just spend £700 in Costa, which is what I generally did for the first month.
Yeah, and actually resilience is something that as medics we're realizing that we need to think about a little bit more too. And more recently throughout my career, it wasn't something that we even spoke about when I was a junior. And now I see that actually, as well as encouraging parents and families to be able to cope with awful situations and being present for them, how we cope as well. So actually we are being encouraged more and more to look at resilience teaching, thinking about human factors, what makes me different to another doctor, how I cope, how I switch off, how because of the way I've said something or made a decision that could be vastly different actually to how someone else, another clinician may have managed the situation. Being aware of that and having insight is hugely, hugely important, because actually, say if you had a bad encounter with a doctor as a stressed parent, how that changes your whole dynamic to if you had a good experience with someone regardless of their level. And in my case with you guys, I was actually still relatively junior, but knowing that, not being patronizing or condescending and not pretending I knew more than I did, and letting you know that in that moment I would try my best for your daughter was enough to hopefully build a relationship that, to be honest, has lasted quite a while now.
Yeah, and just to put it into context, I think when we were in that ward, I think 3 kids actually didn't make it out. So I think that puts some context into how difficult that ward is, how difficult for parents coming into that ward, and also how difficult for staff as well. And the conflict between staff and parents can be quite high. The stress levels are quite high. There's certainly no malice there, because I think as a parent, you know that the doctors and the nurses are trying their best, but it's the anxiety and it's the stress. And I'm so pleased you mentioned about your own emotional intelligence, because one of the things we've talked about in this 30 days of training on the YouTube channel is that in order for your own staff, in order for your players, in order for your business to be on its A game, you also have to be on your A game. And sometimes we forget that. We're so busy taking care of everybody else. We just forget that actually I need to look after myself from time to time.
Yeah, exactly. And being able to switch off is important, but also having an awareness that I might be having an off day or a bad moment, but whatever's going through the mindset of the person I'm talking to, I also have to be able to acknowledge that the way I speak will affect that.
Yeah.
It's not just work where I encounter that, it's everything. Every encounter that I have now, I think I have to think hard about the way I come across, because it changes the dynamics of everything.
Yeah. And it's also, you might come across exactly how you want to, but my perception of what you've just said might be completely different based on the emotional intelligence of my day. And if I'm having a bad day, no matter what you say, I'm having a bad day. And in an environment like that, it was really difficult to actually be positive from day to day. I remember Jessica's first operation, which I think was 23 days, 21 or 23. And what they said was that was the end day that she could have hers. And I remember them coming in saying that they weren't sure whether they were going to do it. And we were like, yeah, you're doing it because there's no other option. You're doing it. And that as a parent, to make some high level decisions like that. And some parents, again, can manage it. Some parents just react to it. Some parents are able to process it. And some parents just fall. And I don't know what you can do in a situation like that to help and support them.
If I'm perfectly honest, when I come across, because sometimes I'm often warned actually, because I've had staff around me that these parents are really stressed or they're angry or whatever, and going in that moment and just saying, like, my go-to phrase a lot of the time is, I genuinely can't begin to imagine what you're going through. I'm not going to pretend that just because I've seen it as a pediatrician that I've actually gone through it as a parent. And as a parent, and more so now that I'm a mum too, I genuinely understand why you're fighting your child's corner and how hard you're fighting. So it's important to keep doing that and advocating for your child. And sometimes that's enough to break the ice so that a parent can then talk to me and I'm down on their level, as opposed to going in and saying, I know best, you need to do as I'm saying. Actually, I don't know what you're going through. I can't begin to imagine it. These are what the paths are in front of us right now. Let me help you get to a decision that you're making. As a parent, you have to make part of that decision. You have to be involved. Everything you say should be acknowledged. No question is dumb or stupid. I would rather you tell me if you're worried than pretend it's not happening. And if you're angry, vent it, yes. Do it in a useful way, potentially. I won't tolerate aggression. But if you're angry, I get it, because I imagine if my child was as sick as yours, I would potentially be in a very similar situation or worse. I don't know. I can't predict it because I've not been there.
Yeah.
But I do understand that that's why you're coming at me like this, because you're advocating for your child. and you're going to be the strongest advocate for your child. So it's fine to be angry in that moment or anxious in that moment. But then you have to be able to verbalize it with me and talk it through. Tell me what the issue is. Let's see what we can do. And there's time. Hopefully there's time to be able to talk through what we need to talk through to get to a combined decision. And that's the most important thing, I think, making parents feel like they're being listened to and involved in a decision. You can't go in and say, I'm going to do this for your child, and you have no say. Then the parent has the right to be angry.
Yeah, and all the staff at the REI were brilliant in that, and we weren't, or we still aren't medical experts by any stretch of the imagination, but we became Jessica experts pretty quickly because we were there so much.
Yeah, and there are children, particularly children with really chronic illnesses, where you really have to acknowledge that, yes, I might have a medical degree and I might be an expert in what I do for a living, but you're an expert in your child. And if you're telling me she's not right, if you're telling me your baby something is wrong, then I need to listen. You spend every waking moment with your child. So if I then don't acknowledge that, then I'm not doing justice by you or your child. And actually, to be honest, that's when potentially things can go wrong. When I don't listen to parents, or if I don't listen to my colleagues, so particularly nursing staff, if they're telling me they're worried, then I need to listen, because actually they've spent far longer with a child. They know that child better than I do. It might be something extremely subtle, but there's something not right. And I want to know that I would be told about it, but that I would then hopefully approach it in an appropriate way too.
Yeah, we certainly had some tipping point moments, and you can tell me now because you're not at the RVI, but I'm sure there's a parents wanted list, and I'm sure we were like top of the psychopathic parents wanted list at some stage in the staff room, weren't we?
I wouldn't go as far as phrasing it like that. I would just potentially say that I may not have sent any sensitive souls in your direction.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree. And also I can remember one conversation was just like, I think you guys just need to leave the ward for a little bit and maybe go and have a glass of wine and then maybe come back.
Oh, I do remember once saying that I think you need to go treat your wife to a spa. Yeah. I do remember hinting much she's your wife now, but in that moment that I really think you should take Tracy away, and I really think that you guys should have some time off the ward and try and be normal and get away from the situation, even if it's half an hour. And actually, on intensive care units, if I'm honest, that is really important. You've got the other phrase I use is you've got the highest quality of nursing staff in terms of nannies and childcare ever have for free. Go, leave your baby, they're fine, come back, be fresh, clear your head, go get a decent meal and come back, and then we'll restart.
Yeah, and we certainly didn't do that. I mean, the RVI itself was phenomenal, but also Crawford House was amazing as well. And the fact that we could stay there. So we were on ward first thing in the morning for ward rounds, and then last thing at night before we got kicked out. And I remember, I don't think it was till maybe the second or even the third month, I managed to take the wife out of the hospital for some food. And we literally looked on What's Around You, I think is the app. And there was a restaurant which was 1.2 miles away from the exit.
Yeah.
That was it. We were there and back in half an hour.
As long as you take breaks, though. I think it's important, because again, this is about emotional stability a lot of the time. And if you don't take yourself out of the situation and have a break, then you're just getting caught up in that moment, and things get a lot bigger and worse than they potentially need to be or potentially are. And again, it's never wrong to step back outside of the box, then come back in. And your children are being cared for in the hospital to an incredibly high kind of quality and a standard. So I would want parents to go and have a break and come back when they needed to. Being present is important too, not taking it to the extreme of just leaving completely. I never frown upon parents who want to be there every hour of the day, but you have to think for yourself as well. It's not healthy. You have to eat, you have to clean, you have to refresh, you have to, but it's different. It's easy to say. Because again, in that moment, your Charles potentially having an operation, potentially you don't know minute to minute, day by day what could happen. And it's easy for us to say, please go have a break. But again, as a parent who has had my baby in hospital twice now for various reasons, I haven't left him. I won't leave him. I know what I'm like. So I say one thing and I practice another again.
And it's strange how much you cover things up as well. So especially with grandparents, you know, we I don't think we ever told them how ill she was at certain times when she was there. And the research that we've seen is that over the last 30 years, there's only been 6 or 7 of Jessica's in the Northeast, and they haven't made it. So she's 6 now, and it's just an absolute wonder to you guys.
And she's incredible. I have the fortunate, I'm in an extremely lucky position where you guys are kind enough to keep you updated on how Jessica's doing. And it's amazing because actually, as a pediatric trainee going through, I leave a job every 6 months and I move on to something else. Sometimes we never see those children again. And we may have created a link, or we may have had a role to play, potentially quite big sometimes, and not knowing how things are happening. And actually, I really do love it when parents sometimes get back in touch or let me know how their child's getting on. I met Jessica in a couple of different roles, actually, didn't I? Because I did other jobs within the RBI where I then encountered Jessica as well. And then slowly a friendship was developed anyway. But it's amazing to see how she's getting on. It makes it all worth it. It makes it all worth it. Because if I think back to that moment now, of when she was that tiny, you could not have predicted how far she's got now and the amazing things she's doing and how funny and cheeky and, you know, strong that girl is. I'm in awe of Jessica. A 6-year-old inspires me to be braver. Yeah. That's how my little girl is.
Yeah, and us too, every day. And one thing that we do is every year we take about the RVI around about Christmas time and just take something for the staff and take a picture as well. Probably for a few reasons. One is to eventually for her to understand where she's come from, but 2, maybe is a little bit of hope as well for everybody, for the staff, because they see a lot worse situations than what we went through regularly, but also maybe for some parents there who are going through similar things we went through.
Yeah, and it's really nice. It's really nice when families and patients are so grateful for what we've done. Some of us genuinely don't feel like we've made an impact sometimes, regardless of how little. And then when you sit back and you sit down and you two will remember that one time I stuck a needle in Jessica's hand and didn't miss. And the fact that you remember that, it's like, oh, okay. No, so really every encounter is important. But to be thanked for it, it's really lovely. It's something that I always value. When a family thanks us as a department, a hospital, great. Individually, it just blows my mind that sometimes people really do value exactly what we do. And it's lovely. And you're right, it would give hope to families out there to see that children in the department, they've, 6 years down the line, there's a picture of a little girl that was here. It's amazing. And it gives hope. It gives an amazing amount of hope to people who are going through an awful situation that may be similar to what you went through all those years back too.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought up that story, Habiba, by the way, as well, about, getting the needle in Jessica once, just in case you ever have to go for a job interview. How many times did you cannulate her first time? Was it 6 out of 6?
I was going to say 6, but I'm not sure. There was another junior who was very good as well.
Yeah, but we also had a 0 out of 6 as well. And it's funny that I don't speak to that person now. So I'm not sure that our conversation, our friendship is now out of the fact that you were successful.
Yeah, I know. Oh dear, I think if I ever failed, what would have happened?
Yeah, well, you do know we were on the top 10 most wanted parents in the RBI, so you know what would happen. With that, though, and again, based on reflection over the last 6 years, is how wonderful a job the NHS always has done, but even more so when you're at the forefront of seeing it face to face on a day-to-day basis as we did. COVID-19's come along. We're in a state of, a massive change environment, but also an additional and a different type of stress and pressure on the RBI. Generally, from you're still at work, how are things going? On a frontline basis.
So I'm still in touch with a lot of my colleagues at the RBI. I'm working in Birmingham, and it's a very different kind of makeup in terms of staff and kind of hospital wise and stuff. But I'm getting a sense of the sheer volume of work across departments is being immense, but also very different. The way my colleagues have adapted to the situation has been amazing. And again, I think a lot of people assume it's just doctors and nurses. It's really not. Everyone from ward clerks to healthcares, our pharmacists, physios, radiologists, even our IT, everything's changed. Everything has been spun on its head. And we've just got on with it. We've got on with it. Obviously, sometimes there's a grumble depending on an update that we get from the government. But the way my colleagues have just got up, accepted what's happened and what's happening still, and rolled with it. We've changed our rotas. So you've gone from normal shifts to only doing 13-hour shifts now. And for me personally, coming off mat leave with an 8-month-old baby, that was quite difficult to adjust to at the beginning. Consultants being on site. And again, teams that never weren't planning on doing certain types of jobs. You've now got trauma and orthopedic surgeons helping on ITUs. You've got consultants. There's an amazing story of a consultant who now does nursing shifts. My closest friend is a dietitian for the NHS, and she's now working on an ITU as a buddy to sick and dying patients. It's absolutely incredible. My colleagues are absolutely incredible. I not any one of them has downplayed anything. They're very humble about what they're doing, and it's inspiring, absolutely inspiring. As is everyone else who are key workers as well. Every time I see my postman, I want to high five him or give him a hug, quite frankly. Never mind the dustbin, the refuse collections, everything that's still running, where people are potentially exposing themselves to this illness. It blows my mind. It blows my mind how amazing good people can be.
Well, there's probably two things which has passed my mind over the last, I think we're maybe 65, 66 days in shielding right now, somewhere around that for us. And then, it's going to be there for the foreseeable future as well. But you're right, it's blown, people in this country have blown my mind in both ways. One is how brilliant they are, how much they've pulled together, how much they've brought a little bit of community spirit back, and also the selflessness of the individuals in this country. And then on the other hand, the stupidity of some people just also blows my mind as well. And I'm very, very rarely am I seeing any middle ground here. I'm either seeing just ridiculously, the best of humanity, or just the stupidness of humanity in one go.
I think the middle ground are all the people who are quietly staying indoors and getting on with their lives and not exposing themselves or others around them. There's a lot to be said and thanked for just being sensible. But you're right. I think it can get really frustrating now, particularly at this time in particular, where lockdown is being eased a little bit and how traffic has instantly gone out, things are getting busy, and you're getting a sense of, people, you're not scared. You're not worried at all. You're not conscious of the fact that actually that person you may have passed may have had it or got it, that you're exposing people, that the numbers are going to start to go up again. It's so incredibly difficult to manage, and I'm not saying that anyone I know or I would have done a better job could have made those decisions. But actually, in my own little bubble, if I didn't have to go to work, I wouldn't be leaving the house.
Yeah,
I'm still petrified. And it's not just for me, it's for anyone that I might come into contact with. I come home from work every day petrified that I may be then bringing the virus home and exposing my child and my husband. And it terrifies me. People aren't sleeping. We're calling it COVID insomnia. We're not sure if it's a genuine medical thing, or actually if it's because we're all anxious. And I'm anxious. I'm worried that the moment I get that phone call that my family, who are being so sensible in the north and isolating, that actually someone gets taken down or suspected. And then what do I do? Can I go there? Can I not? Do my sense I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for someone to give me some awful news. And I don't want anyone to go through that. And I don't want anyone to go through actually getting something or being told that they, a loved one is dying or dead. Never mind the fact that that person who's closest to you or your door, you may never see again. And if I could just wrap everyone in bubble wrap and say, just sit still for a little while longer. It's hard. I know it's hard. It's incredibly hard. And people do need to, work. They, for mental health, need to get out of the house. I do get it. I just think people need to be sensible. And there are things that we do not need to be doing, and we do not need to be sitting in a park sunbathing. We do not need to be meeting up with that friend just for the sake. It's not necessary. It's really not yet.
We don't even need to watch the Bundesliga because we've never watched it for like 40 odd years. So why do we need to watch that now? It's like, yes, football's starting, the Bundesliga. Yeah, I've never watched a match in my life, so why do?
My husband's dead. He's so happy. He's like, oh, there's some German football coming. I was like, really? When have you ever paid attention? That's how, you know what? If it gives you a fix. But I mean, I've got my opinions on, if I'm honest, about sports as well. There's more important things in life, as in living and being healthy. And I could have all the money in the world, but it's no good to me if all the people that I love are dead or I'm dead. And
that's what it has given us. And you said it's really hard. And in reflection of 60 odd days in shielding, I'm not finding it hard. Yes, I'm having a few wobbles. So the first week I had a little bit of a wobble because I said this year I'd run 365 miles for the RBI in Crawford House, and raise some sponsorship money for that, mainly to give something back. And running 365 miles is a nightmare because I hate running. So I don't know who came up with that stupid idea. But when you can't even leave your house, that's a lot of miles you have to run in your back garden. And mentally and physically, I was just kind of, I'm not sure I can do this. And then my reflection was about all of the kids in the RBI in the ward that Jessica was in, and all of the parents who actually weren't as lucky as we were, all of the staff as well. And I'm like, I can run in my back garden. That's not hard. So actually the hardship for me, it hasn't really hit me yet, because as soon as I got over that little barrier and I reframed everything and I processed everything, do I have as much money coming in? Absolutely not, because I'm self-employed. Do I get to go to the football and go to the pub? Absolutely not. But going and watching my football team is never that fun anyway. So it's not such a hard listening. So actually it hasn't been necessarily that much of a hardship. It's just because my mindset is based on what needs to be done and what's more important. I think the difficulty, Habiba, is actually I'm frightened of going out ever, because if I do catch it, or there's some clown out there who's been stupid enough to not stick to some of the rules, who passes it on to me in a supermarket, and then I pass it on to Jess, and then all of a sudden we have a bigger concern and issue. That's my fear.
Yeah. And I think it's a very real fear, and I think it's logical. These are not irrational thoughts or irrational fears that people are having. This could happen. This could happen, so it's okay to be afraid. And but it's also about being a little bit aware of when it's okay to then ask for help. And I think there's people who are potentially suffering mentally quite a lot from this, in terms of being locked indoors and not coping, but also then being afraid of what's going to happen if they go out, and the anxiety levels there. And I think there's going to be a lot of collateral damage out of this in the long term, both for just normal everyday people coping mentally, when we put our kids back into school, when I go about going, normal high street shop, never mind essential shopping at the supermarket, simple things like that, to staff and key workers who have been exposing themselves every day to thinking, well, I've done it because I had to, and I've done it because that's my job. And after all this is over, how we go back to normal. I don't accept that this is a new normal. There will be a point where we go back to normal. And some of my colleagues' threshold of what they're going to tolerate anymore, and how they're going to cope, and potentially genuine concerns about things like post-traumatic stress. Because I know, particularly in adult medicine, how traumatic this has been for patients, for families, but for staff who have dealt with all of this and have then just continued to deal with it. As a pediatrician, I do have to say I'm very fortunate that we don't have as many cases, nowhere near, in fact. And I think there's a little bit of fear about super spreaders. And I have to say, I think that the way evidence is pointing us in the direction of actually children aren't super spreaders. They may not even catch it as adults do, therefore don't spread it as adults do. Now, that's not me sitting on the fence of, oh, I think school should be reopened, because at the same time you reopen a school, you're exposing everyone who takes a child to school. Yeah. There are children who have been really sick and died from COVID as well, but it is a minutia of what's happening with the rest of the population. And we have to be sensible about who we're protecting. And again, it's so difficult. I think anyone who comes out of this thinking they know all the answers or it's black and white, they're living in cuckoo land, because we don't. It's amazing the amount of research that's coming out of all of this. It's amazing the amount we're learning on a day-to-day basis. I get daily updates from numerous sources about new updates in terms of how we're managing things, how we're working as colleagues, how we look after our patients, and we're still learning. So anyone who claims to be an expert is a liar. Yeah. Anyone who thinks that any argument for any one of these things that are happening in terms of easing lockdown, reopening schools and things, again, they don't know what they're talking about if they think it's easy. The other thing that I genuinely would say as a pediatrician, though, is if your child is unwell and you're worried, we're still there. Our wards are open, our business is still running. So if you're worried, bring them in. I'd rather see them be able to reassure you and let you go than you potentially sit on your child thinking you're doing the right thing, because that's the message that we were fed at the beginning. But actually, we are seeing other complications from this. So we've seen later presentations of things like appendicitis that are needing bigger operations, for instance, or sepsis, because families didn't realize that, you know, their child having a temperature wasn't okay. For instance, and when they would have come in before. So I would say, if you're worried, bring your child in, or, you know, or speak to the right people in terms of one-on-one GP, walk-in centres and us. Because I would hate to think that people are worried about their children not coming in. But yeah, everything, and we have to be sensible throughout all of this.
And I think, Habiba, that's a brilliant message to finish on. Thank you massively for your honesty, as always, and that's probably one of the reasons why we connected so well, is the fact that you were always honest, good days and bad days. And if we take that as a great message, that the NHS is open for business,
very much,
as normal. But also in terms of giving you guys some respect. Thursdays are nice, that we get to clap and applaud you guys on Thursdays. It'll be interesting when this is over, and it will be at some stage, because we have to be positive. We have to understand that there will be a normal, whether it's a new normal or whether it's an old normal. I'm not quite sure, because I think normal is a word we throw out, but every day is a new normal. It always has been, you know. So, you know, I lived in 5 different countries around the world. Every time I went to a new country, that was a new normal. So I think we will get to the stage where things will settle down, but we need to, I hope, as a country, start to respect the NHS more than we have done. I think we take it for granted a lot. And I think hopefully that we start to be a little bit better in terms of community spirit again. We had it, somehow we lost it, based on maybe some self-actualization and a bit of selfishness, but I'd like us to go back to that a little bit.
I think as someone who's, you know, British and grown up in very like in the north, and now I'm in the West Midlands, the NHS to me as a patient is a complete privilege. Yeah. Being able to do what I do and love my job is, again, another privilege. I couldn't be more grateful for the NHS for so many reasons, and I really want people to understand that as a whole, that it's a privilege, it's not a right, not necessarily, and taking it for granted can only go one way in the future, really, and it would be a real shame to lose something that makes me so very proud to be British.
Yeah.
We need to.
Love that, and what a great way to finish. Habiba, thank you very much. For everybody else, please subscribe, please share it for everybody. So for parents who've got people in hospital at the time who maybe need a little bit of inspiration, then listen to Habiba. That would be absolutely fab. But also, just in terms of a parent's point of view, we always thank you, the RVI and Corporate House, and everybody else who worked there. And it's great to stay in touch. So Habiba, thank you very much for your time. I know you're really busy. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.